Part 1, Friday. Caught. I don't know who was more shocked. Me, at finding my mom coming in through the back door of our home. Or her, at finding me, her 16-year-old son, sitting in the kitchen, doing his homework and wearing a schoolgirl's uniform. For the longest time, we simply stood there looking at each other. And then she spoke. "Okay, Gavin, we obviously need to speak about this, but I'm in a bit of a rush, so just stay as you are. I'll be as quick as I can and then we can discuss this." She walked into the hallway and picked up her cleaning bag, which was full multi-surface sprays and aerosols and all manner of cloths and dusters and other cleaning equipment. Obviously she had forgotten to take it with her that morning. I couldn't speak. I was on the verge of tears. I had gone from being calm and confident to feeling overwhelmed with guilt, fear and shame in about a quarter of a second. Guilt at wanting to wear girls' clothes in the first place, fear at what would happen now that I had been discovered, and shame at being caught. Mom paused at the door taking a last look at me, and then she was gone. I was just glad that my dad wasn't here to see this. He had passed away from cancer when I was 8 years old. My memories of him are vague, but I remember him as a kind, loving man who cared deeply for his family and made sure that they were financially cared for after he was gone. Then I began to wonder how I had been found out. What had caused the discovery of what I thought was my private guilty secret? My mom, Angela, was a domiciliary care worker. She had gone out that morning to see her client, Mr. Carter, who lived a few streets away. He was in his 90s, with onset Alzheimer's and a pair of dodgy hips. But he was fiercely independent, insisting on living in his own house, the home he had lived in and raised a family in for over 60 years. She had left 90 minutes earlier and was not due back for another 2 hours, at least. Though it was a Friday, I was off school as it was a teacher training day, so with a few hours to myself, I had decided to indulge in my guilty hobby for a little while. And do some homework, of course. I had the following Monday off as it was a bank holiday, so there was an opportunity there as well. Since I had been young, I had been crippled with a fascination for women's clothes. It had started when I was 10, with a swimsuit. I don't know how or why, but I had found a girl's swimsuit at school. It had just been laying there on the floor. I had picked it up, stuffed it into my bag and had taken it home. It had been a further 2 weeks before I found the courage to actually put it on. That first time had been a revelation. It had been soft and comfortable, the clinging fabric encasing my slender frame, and it had felt incredible. I had not had access to any other clothes until I was 13 and was able to go out and shop for myself, with the generous allowance I was given in cash from the odd jobs for the other families in the neighborhood. I had bought underwear and hosiery from Primark and tops and skirts and dresses from charity shops. Some fit me, and others didn't, but I learnt my sizes as I had gone on, and over the last couple of years, I had amassed a bag full of girls' clothes which I hid in a large rucksack in the back of my wardrobe. I tried to present a feminine image, but with puberty came problems. I grew hair on my arms and legs and my chest, and muscles filled out the lean short frame that I had. I had not gotten the growth spurt I hoped for, but I had risen from 5 foot 5 inches to 5 foot 7. I was no muscle-bound bodybuilder, but at least I had grown up a bit. Though I was popular in school, my nickname was the Runt, which tells you all you need to know about me, I suppose. Also with puberty came the sexual urges, the fantasies, the masturbation sessions in my bra and panties, but these had passed and yet I continued dressing. I simply felt calmer, more confident and more caring when I was dressed. I didn't really understand the issue, and though I could have looked it up on the internet, I dare not use the computer for such a search. We only had the one machine in the small family room and Mom also had access to it. If I had left that particular search history on the PC, then my mom would have undoubtedly found it, leading to questions I had no answers for. For the next hour, I sat in the living room with my thoughts raging uncontrollably through my head. The upcoming discussion with my mother went through various scenarios in the movie theater in my brain. She would make me throw the clothes away and promise to never wear girls' clothes again, which was a promise I knew I couldn't keep. She would call all my friends and tell them about my secret to expose me, humiliate me, shame me. She would get angry, scream and shout at me, and then throw me out. into the street, dressed as a hairy schoolgirl, for all the neighbors to see. The one thing I desperately wanted to do was to go up to my room, change out of these things, get dressed in my proper clothes and pretend that this had never happened. But it was also the one thing that I didn't do. Something that Mom had said had stopped me. Stay as you are, we can discuss this situation. Also, she had not looked angry, or disappointed, or shocked. Just resigned? Yes, that was it. Resigned. After an hour and a quarter, I heard the back door open and heard Mom call out from the kitchen. Gavin? Could you come here, please? I rose, my body trembling, and I shuffled into the kitchen. Mom was preparing coffee for us. I sat at the table. Mom put the 2 cups of coffee down and then she pulled out a chair opposite me and sat down. She did not fold her arms across her chest, or cross her legs, or any of the things that she normally did when she was upset with me. She simply sat there with one hand in her lap and the other wrapped around her coffee cup. Okay, Gavin. Here's the obvious question. Why are you wearing a girl's school uniform? No, answer me this first. Where did you even get a schoolgirl's uniform? I got the uniform from a charity shop. The underwear came from Primark, I mumbled. Stop mumbling and speak clearly, please, Mom said with a soft smile on her lips, and don't slump in your chair, sit up straight. I settled back in the chair and sat up. I sniffed and then answered her again. The uniform came from a charity shop and I bought the underwear from Primark. A boy buying girls' clothes? That must have been a little embarrassing. It was at first, I said. I remember the first item I had ever bought. It had been a leotard from a charity shop. I had been blushing so much that I was certain I was glowing. It got easier though, when I realized that they didn't care what they were selling and just wanted my money. I see, said Mum, her expression growing both thoughtful and pensive, and have you gone outside while dressed up? I shook my head emphatically. No. Never. Mom nodded and seemed to relax a little. As for me, I was not lying. With my hairy arms and legs, I would never have passed and would have easily been spotted as a boy in drag even at night. And that would have led to humiliation and name-calling at best. I didn't want to even imagine the worst. So, my original question, why are you dressed as girl? I glanced down at my clothes, my girl clothes I suppose. At the moment, I was wearing a short-sleeved blouse that was tailored for a bust that I didn't really have, but a bra and a couple of pairs of rolled-up socks sorted that out. I was wearing a classic gym skirt that hung just above the knee and a pair of black tights. I was wearing my own trainers with the outfit, and they sort of worked. I sighed as I tried to compose my thoughts. The usual go-to answer of I don't know seemed totally inadequate, and while it was the truth, I did have sort of an answer. I guess I'm just fascinated by the feel of the clothes and the cut of them. I like wearing them because I feel different. In what way? Mom asked. I feel calmer. I feel more confident and I feel nice. Right then. Mom took a sip of her coffee, then she smiled broadly. Is this why you've been growing your hair out? For over 3 years now, I had resisted her repeated demands to get my short brown hair cut. I wanted a hairstyle that I could tie back in a ponytail so it wouldn't look out of place and yet could be styled in a feminine cut when I wanted it. It was now down to my shoulder and when loose, it hung in a very feminine style. As for facial hair, there was a little peach fuzz. I had to shave once a week, if that. Unlike my good friend Max, who shaved 2, maybe 3 times a week. I reached up to stroke my hair. Yes. It beats wearing a wig. My mom actually laughed. I'll bet it does. Okay. Now for the uncomfortable question. Are you gay? I glanced up at her. I opened my mouth to tell her no, I wasn't gay, but some of my masturbatory fantasies, eventually I shrugged. I don't know, I don't think so. I do like girls, but that's okay. I think you're a little too young to know which way you swing if I'm honest. So, do you have any other female clothes? Yeah, I've got a bag full upstairs. And have you ever worn any of my clothes? I almost laughed at that. Mom was tall and slender, but she clearly bigger in stature than I was. I shook my head with a slight grin. No, you're bigger than I am, no offense. I don't think your clothes would fit me properly. Mom nodded. None taken, and I'm glad you haven't been in my wardrobe. She took another sip of her coffee and took a deep breath, in through her nose and out through her mouth. It was a sign that she was thinking. Okay. So, let me get this straight. You dress up at home while I'm out or at work, and you do it because you like the clothes and because they make you feel calm and confident. Is that right? I nodded. Mom smiled. Okay, Gavin. I know a little bit about this. It's known as transvestism. I'm going to be honest with you, I'm a little shocked to find you dressed up. But I'm not angry. I glanced up, hope beginning to blossom in my chest. You're not? No. Not even disappointed. I relaxed for the first time since the discussion had started. Mom continued. First off all, do you think you're the only boy who dresses up as a girl? I nodded. I thought I was weird or something. Well, you're not weird. About half the male population of the world has cross-dressed at some point in their lives. Either for a dare, or fancy dress, or they've lost a bet. Or won one, and about half of that 50% goes on to do it full time. Well, it's a little lower than that. But I would guesstimate that 1 in 5 men dress up as women, for varying reasons. And while it's known as transvestism, I prefer the term crossdressing. Transvestism makes it sound cold and clinical, like a mental illness or something. She looked disgusted for a moment and then brightened up. When in fact, it's a harmless hobby that has long been removed from any list of mental or psychological disorders. Unless, you don't want to become a girl, do you? She actually looked worried at this. But I was adamant about it. No. I don't want to be a girl. I just like the clothes. Okay. That would raise serious concerns that I don't particularly want to address right now. But that's another matter. If you don't want to be a girl, but just want to dress as a girl, then it's fine. That surprised me. It's fine? That I'm dressed as a girl? Really? She nodded in an encouraging fashion. Really? I'm surprised, shocked even. But I'm not angry. And if you want to dress like a girl, then that's fine with me. She then gazed at me shrewdly. Stand up. Walk to the doorway, turn around, walk back and sit down. My puzzlement must have shown in my face, because she smiled. Trust me. I stood up, walked to the doorway. Then I turned around, walked back to the table and sat back in the seat. Mom laughed out loud. You dress like a girl but you walk like a boy. Watch me. With that, she rose. She walked to the doorway gracefully. She turned and walked back to the table, where she sat down and crossed her legs, right over left. She smiled at me. That's the way a girl walks. Now, you try it. I stood up and walked to the doorway like Mom had. One foot in front of the other, in a line. It added a wiggle to my hips that I hadn't had before. I turned, spinning on one heel and walked back to the table, where I sat down again, reaching back to sweep the hem of my skirt beneath me. Then like Mom, I crossed my legs, right over left, and placed my hands in my lap. I looked at Mom expectantly. Her expression did not bode well. That's better, but it's not perfect yet. You just need a bit more practice. Anyway, show me your clothes. I took her upstairs to my room and dug out the rucksack, emptying it on the bed. Mom sorted through it, praising me for my taste and style. I obviously had good fashion sense. We then spent the next few minutes placing my mismatched underwear in my dresser and hanging the meager collection of dresses, skirts and tops in my wardrobe. She asked me to change out of the uniform and into a pale blue dress that had caught her eye, and then meet her back in the kitchen. I changed, hanging the skirt and blouse in my wardrobe and climbing into the dress. It was short, above the knee with a high neckline and lace full-length sleeves. I was later to learn that it was called a peplum dress. I didn't know that at the time, I just liked the color and the lace. My mom and I spent the evening watching television, and rather than cook, she ordered a takeaway pizza. She also spent the evening giving me tips and advice on how to walk and talk like a girl. I seemed to doing something right, because the tips, which I followed, came less often. She smiled at me as we sat on the sofa watching a movie. Gavin. I can't keep calling Gavin if you're dressing as a girl. If you'd been born a girl, your father and I were going to call you Gabby. So that's your girl name. If that's okay? Gabby? I liked it. It suited me better than Gavin, well, in my current clothes at least. Yes, please, thank you. Mom merely smiled at me. You're welcome, Gabby. At bedtime, she lent me a nightgown to sleep in. It was a bit big, but it was silk, and it hung well. I slept well. But I had some strange dreams that evening. I barely remembered what the dreams were about, but I remembered a state of contentment. Part 2, Saturday. Proper planning. I woke late on Saturday morning, unable to remember when I had had such a decent night's sleep. Grabbing my phone from the beside cabinet, I noted the time was just 10:30. I got up, had a shower to wash the sleep from my head and body, and scrubbed myself clean of dirt, both real and imagined. Then I dried myself. I dressed in male underwear, a pair of clean jeans, a baggy old t-shirt, and my trainers. I went downstairs to find the house empty. There was a note on the table from Mom. Gone shopping, will be back at midday. Breakfast in the cupboard. I made myself a plate of scrambled eggs on toast and a cup of coffee. Then, with no jobs to do or errands to run, I went on the PlayStation. That gobbled up an hour. I heard the front door open and heard my mom come upstairs and head into her bedroom. She stayed in there for about 10 to 16 minutes before she knocked on my door. She poked her head around the door. Gavin. Come downstairs, will you? She left my room and I heard her footsteps retreat down the stairs and into the living room. I turned my PlayStation off and followed. I paused at the door, wondering if I should get changed, but then with a sigh, I headed down the stairs. Mom was sat in the kitchen. She was smiling broadly. Sit down, Gavin. I pulled a chair out from the table and sat down. Right then. After I discovered your secret yesterday and after asking you about it and giving you your femme name, I have decided that if you're going to do this, you're going to do it properly. And that means you do exactly as I say, and you don't question me. Do you understand? Yes, I said. I was not sure I understood what I was signing up for, but I was sure that Mum knew what she was doing. Good. She stood up. Follow me. She led me back to my room. She reached into the wardrobe and pulled out a short black skirt and a white top. Get undressed and meet me in the bathroom. I undressed to my underwear and followed her to the bathroom. Mum was sitting on the toilet, with 2 bottles in her reading one of the labels when I entered. She looked up and smiled. Take you underwear off. Get naked. I blushed a little at this. And don't be shy. I used to change your nappies. I've seen it before. I stripped off my boxer shorts and my socks. Standing there in just my birthday suit was a little embarrassing, especially as my thing had changed substantially since puberty. My mom looked up, fixed her gaze on mine, for which I was grateful. Right then. This is depilatory cream. The instructions say to smear it all over your body, apart from your head, and wait for 15 minutes. Use the whole bottle. She handed it to me. When you're finished with that, shower thoroughly and then dry yourself. Oh, and pat yourself dry. Don't rub, or you'll irritate your skin. And when you're dry, use this. She handed me a second bottle. It's a moisturizer. It'll keep your skin soft and supple. Then meet me in your bedroom, okay? I looked up from the instructions on the first bottle. Okay. What on earth was I getting myself into? I was a little scared, but I was also curious. Mom left me alone and I started with the depilatory cream. It had a noxious chemical smell that irritated my nose a lot and my eyes a little. It felt cold and goopy in my hands. I spread it over my legs, my arms and armpits, and then over my chest. I even smeared it on the peach fuzz that was covering my bum. With the bottle empty, I stood in the shower, shivering. It began to itch, and there was a mild burning sensation on my limbs. When the 15 minutes passed, I turned the shower on and stood under the stream of water. I began washing myself for the second time that day. It felt weird having a second shower in one day, but the surprising thing was that the hair on my body began falling away, leaving bare patches on my skin. After several minutes I was hairless from the neck down, apart from the sparse patch of pubic hair around my penis and testicles. I dried myself thoroughly, remembered to pat myself dry, instead of rubbing. When I was dry, I spread the moisturizer over my body. It had a floral scent, lavender, and it felt good on my hairless limbs. When I had finished, I tidied up. The empty bottles went in the bin, the moisturizer was placed on the shelf, the towel was folded and placed on the rail. At a loss for what to wear, I put my underwear back on. It was still clean and I wanted to cover up. Back in my bedroom, I found my mom waiting in the chair at my desk which had 3 large shopping bags on it. She smiled at me. "So, you're hairless now? What's it like?" I rubbed my hands over my arms and then my legs, noting how smooth and silky they felt. "It's a little weird, but it feels nice." "Good. Now, I've thrown some of your underwear in the bin." She held up her hand to forestall my complaints. "It was a bit worn out and you really need matching pairs. So I brought you some new pairs." She reached for one of the shopping bags that was sat on the desk and tipped it out on the bed. Out spilled a collection of fresh new underwear. "Go on," Mum said, "pick something." I sorted through the bras and panties, selected a matching set in a pale yellow. Mum nodded approvingly. "Good choice. Now, before you put it on, I need you to put this on." She held out a flash-colored object that looked like a cross between a thong and a torture device. "It's a gaff," she explained. "The tube at the front holds your penis back between your legs and pushes your testicles back up into your body. Now it's nice and tight and will present a smooth front, instead of an unsightly bulge." She left the room to give some privacy. I took off my boxers and threaded my legs through the leg holes. Then I pulled the garment up to my thighs. I forced my penis into the tube and felt it being pulled back. As I raised the gaff up around my hips I felt my balls being squished upwards and my penis straightening out between my legs. I pulled the hem of the gaff up to my waist and felt it settle everything into place. It was a peculiar sensation. It was not the torture device I had thought it was, but it wasn't comfortable either. It left my groin smooth, flat, and feminine. Mom returned after I called out and informed that I had struggled into the garment. "How does it feel?" I flexed my legs and the gaff pulled on my genitals in an uncomfortable way, but it wasn't too bad, not bad. I could get used to this. "Good. Put the underwear on." I donned the panties, surprised at how comfortable they felt. Then I hooked the bra in front of me, spun it around my waist and pulled it up around my chest, drawing the straps up over my shoulders. I reached for the tights, but Mum held up a hand. "Wait a minute." She picked the second bag off my desk and pulled out a large box, which she opened. Inside were 2 very realistic-looking breast forms. These are C-cup silicone breast forms. They sit inside the cups of your bra and there's even a special adhesive so we can glue them into place if we want. She took one of the forms from the box, holding it in her palm. "These will do better than socks, don't you think?" "Wow. These are great." "They must have been expensive," I said. "They were. Very expensive. So take good care of them." She reached into the book and pulled out a sheet. "These instructions tell you how to look after them." Standing up, she slipped one form into the left cup and the second into the right cup. They were a little cold and clammy at first, but they warmed up quickly. As I stood marveling at the weight and feel of them, Mum adjusted the bra to accommodate and hold my breasts, firmly and properly. "Right, put your tights on now," she said, sitting back down. I had several pair of tights before, but there was only the one thick pair left. The others must have gone in the bin. There were several new pairs, however, some patterned and some plain. I decided on a new pair that had a diamond pattern to them. I pulled the package open and removed the tights. Sitting on my bed, I bunched up the left leg, placed my left foot in the fabric and pulled it to my knee. I repeated this procedure with the right leg. Then I stood and eased the remainder up my legs. I could not get over how nice it felt. My legs, which were smooth and soft now, reacted to the feel and touch in fabric in a way that I had never felt before. It was exquisite. I pulled the tights up and settled the waistband around my slender waist to rest against my tummy, which was fluttering by now. With the underwear in place, I reached for the skirt. Mom stopped me again. Wait a moment. She stood and reached into another shopping bag, pulling out a short pink robe. Put this on and follow me. She strode to the door and I pulled the pink robe on, pulling it around my body and tying the belt. It was like my regular dressing gown in a way, but it was a world apart in others. My male gown was dark blue and was a thick coarse material and hung down to my knees. This robe was thin and silky. It felt wonderful against my hairless body. My senses reeled from the new sensations I was experiencing. It was also short, barely covering my thighs. Mom was in her bedroom when I followed her out and she was stood at her dressing table. All of her stuff, which was usually arranged over the table, had been moved and was now set out on the left-hand side. Several new items were arranged on the right-hand side of the table and the mirror that stood on the table was covered with a long cloth. Right. Hair and makeup. Sit down. Hair? Makeup? I didn't want to wear makeup. Did I? I remembered my promise. To do whatever she asked and ask no questions. We were doing it properly, after all. I sat at her dressing table and Mom plugged in a hairdryer. Then, using a brush, she dried my long hair. Before she became a domiciliary care worker, she had been a hairdresser, which came in handy for some of her clients. Men who wanted a short back and sides and women who wanted their hair bleached and styled. Using the brush and the dryer in a swift practiced motion, she dried my hair, but also styled it in a feminine style. Ooh, there's a lot of split ends here, she remarked. Do you use conditioner when you wash it? I shrugged. I had never considered hair care to be a priority until now. No, not really. Well, you should. However you want it, you should take care of it. Not only that, it gives it body and volume. I will need to trim it at some point. No, I said, a little too loudly. Mom stepped back. Oh, relax, Gabby. I'm not going to cut it all off, or give you a crew cut. I'll just trim the split ends off and tidy it up a little. Besides, it encourages growth. She stepped forward again and continued drying my hair. When it was dry, she continued brushing it, letting it hang in a soft style that bounced around my face and shoulders in soft waves. With care and conditioning, it's going to look absolutely beautiful. Do you promise me to keep it clean, washed, and conditioned? I promise, I said. And will you let me trim it? I hesitated for a moment. Yeah. Mom beamed with delight. Excellent. She frowned through a thoughtful expression. I wonder what you'd look like as blonde. Or maybe a redhead. I turned and smiled at her. She chuckled. Ooh, adventurous. But let's learn to walk before we start running. Right then. Makeup. As you can see, I've arranged the dresser so we can both use it. All my stuff is on the left, so don't use it until you ask, and all your stuff is on the right. I won't use it unless you give me permission. Agreed? Agreed. That threw me a bit. Had I just agreed to sharing makeup with my mom? Right. First step, foundation. She then explained what she was doing as she applied a layer of foundation to my face and then, still explaining what she was doing, she applied a layer of powder. She then worked on my eyes with eyeliner, mascara, and a shadow. She added a little blush to my cheeks, just to give me a glow, she said. She then outlined my lips with a lip pencil and filled the outline with lipstick. She then stood and left the room, returning with the top and the skirt. Right then. You can finish dressing. I took the skirt. It was short and tight and, being lycra, clung to the body like a second skin. It had red piping down the sides and I thought I looked good in it. The top was a white cold shoulder top. This too was tight, but it was stretchy. I pulled it over my head, careful not mess up my hairstyle or my makeup, and thinking how strange that was, and stretched it down around my torso. My new breasts tinted the fabric in a prominent but not outrageous way. Mom had left the room as I had dressed and come back with a shoebox. She opened it up to reveal of ankle boots. "Try these on," she said. I took the boots, marveling at them. They were a light gray with zips on the outside and a small 2-inch heel. I sat on the bed, placed them on my feet and zipped them up. I stood up. I was dizzy by the additional 2 inches added to my height and shook on them. Mom grinned at me. "How do they feel?" "They're a perfect fit," I said. "How did you know my size?" "I'm your mother, Gabby. I've been buying your clothes since you were born. I know your sizes off by heart." "Oh, right." I was steady on the heels now. As long as I didn't move, I would be fine. "Take a few steps," Mum said. I stepped forward and the movement felt awkward, forced somehow. "You're still walking like a boy. Take smaller steps and put one foot in front of the other. Walk in a straight line now. And don't swing your shoulders, swing your hips." I did as instructed. It was like having to learn to walk all over again. But after a few steps I felt I was getting the hang of it. And judging by the smile on Mum's face, she too was impressed. "You're getting there, girl. Want to see what you look like? Okay. Come over here." I walked over to her wardrobe, which had mirrored doors. Both doors were open, so I had been unable to see my reflection while I had been dressing. She closed the doors and I saw my image for the first time. "Oh my God!" The young girl in the reflection put her hands up to her cheeks, a look of amazed surprise on her face. She had a long mane of dark brown hair that flowed in waves around her face. She was wearing a white cold shoulder top, a short black skirt that in diamond patterned tights that clung to her feminine curves. She had a light layer of makeup, with smoky full colors around the eyes, a light blush highlighting her cheekbones and a layer of pink lipstick on her lips. And the girl in the reflection was me. I couldn't believe that I looked so. "I look like a girl," I said. I stood in a feminine gesture. I cocked my left leg and placed my hands on my hips. Mum chuckled. "You're looking good, girl." "I'm feeling good, Mum." It was early in the evening that Mum dropped what I would later call the bombshell. We had spent the afternoon with me practicing my feminine movements. How to sit, how to stand, how to walk, how to talk, everything I had learned in my 16 years in the world, I had to learn again, but from a girl's perspective. And I was a quick learner apparently. We had just finished a light meal of salad. I had to look after my figure now, when Mum told me forgo the washing up and we retired to the living room. "Right then, Gabby. You need more clothes and a few more pairs of shoes, more than I could get for you this morning. So, how do you feel about going shopping tomorrow?" Now normally, I hated going shopping and avoided shops and supermarkets as much as I could, preferring to order stuff online when I could. I even had an arrangement with Mum. As long as I asked her, and as long I paid her first, she would provide her credit card details for these purchases. She never let me see them, so I didn't know them, or needed to. However, this time, there was a new eagerness. "Yeah. I'd like to. I can finally afford that new PlayStation game I've been wanting. And if I check the used goods stores, I can probably find it cheaper." "That's good, because you'll be going dressed as you are now. As Gabby." Emotions rushed through my head so quickly that I couldn't keep track of them all, but one emotion registered above the rest. Fear, for a variety of reasons. Fear at being recognized as a boy in girls' clothing. Fear at being ridiculed for what I was. Fear at bringing shame to my mum. I shook my head. I can't. I just can't. I'll be spotted as a boy and get laughed at. You'll get laughed at. I can't do that to you, Mum, I can't. It was Mum's turn to shake her head. "Gabby, you look extremely passable now. You look like a young girl, you walk and talk like a young girl. And we both know that sooner or later you're going to want to go out dressed like that. And if it's going to be sooner, then so be it, and I'd prefer to be with you. But I'm a boy dressed as a girl. And I wouldn't want to embarrass you like that. Gabby, my mom was actually laughing now, something that annoyed me. If I thought for 1 minute that you were going to embarrass me, I wouldn't let you dress in the house. Let alone take you out. So what do you say? I didn't say anything for a few moments. I didn't know what to say. Eventually, I sorted out my confused thoughts into coherent words. I hadn't really thought about going out dressed as a girl, or passing for a girl. I just liked dressing like one. But if you think I can do it. Mom was nodding eagerly. Okay. I'll do it. Good. Though the smile remained on her face, she seemed to sag a little, as if she was deflating. Well, it's been a busy day today and you've come a long way. I'm proud you. Really? You've learned a lot today. So let's have a relaxing night in front of the telly, shall we? Sounds like a good idea. What shall we watch? Mom sighed deeply as she considered the evening's entertainment. Oh, choose a DVD. Only no Marvel Comics Universe films, please. That raised my hackles, and the argument that followed was heated, but only slightly and light-hearted. I eventually persuaded her to watch Guardians of the Galaxy Vol. 2. Because I knew my mom had sort of a crush on Kurt Russell. She watched it without complaint. I think she might even have enjoyed it. Part 3, Sunday. Shopping. I was roused from a deep sleep and a comfortable dream by a hefty knocking at my door. I raised myself up and glared at my alarm clock. It was just turned 9 o'clock in the morning, which, as far as I was concerned, equated to silly o'clock in the morning. It was a Sunday after all. I pulled the covers up over my head. Go away, I grunted. I heard the door open. Then the covers were ripped off the bed. I glared up to see my mum, already dressed, frowning down at me. It broke into an easy smile. Get up, sleepy head. It's time to get up. Have a shower, then put your underwear and robe on. Come downstairs for breakfast. We have a lot to do today. She left the room. I looked about my room in the mid-morning light and tried to remember what was happening. Oh yeah, I was pretending to be a girl called Gabby, and my mom was helping me do it. I would have thought it was a bad dream, only I hadn't had any bad dreams lately. I was dressed in a pale blue nightgown that my mom had brought the previous morning. I rose, and for a moment, I thought I was still dreaming, only I knew I wasn't. Mom had already selected my outfit for the day. A knee-length black skirt, dark blue blouse, and the pale yellow matching bra and panties from yesterday. I got undressed, and in just my panties, I made way onto the bathroom. Mom's voice floated up from the bottom of the stairs. And don't forget to condition your hair. I stood under the shower for a moment, still waking up. Then I washed my body, washed my hair, and used Mom's conditioner on my long mane of hair. When I got out, I patted myself dry and went back into my bedroom, one towel wrapped around my waist and my long hair in another towel. I stopped by the mirror in the hall for a moment. My reflection didn't look right. I undid the towel, wrapped it higher, covering my chest, and tied it off. That looked better. In my bedroom, I blew dry my hair and used some hairspray to set it. It was soft and fell in soft waves around my face and shoulders. I was pleased with the effect. I donned my gaff, and yes, it was as uncomfortable as I remembered, and then I put my panties on. I donned the bra, but before I pulled it up around my shoulders, I settled my false breasts into the cups. I was tempted to read the instructions, to see how they felt when they were attached to my chest, and hanging like they should have hung there. I had the solvent, I could have done it, but I felt like that was a step too far. As if I hadn't taken too many steps already. After donning my tights, I pulled my robe around me, and headed down to the kitchen. Good morning, Gabby. How are you feeling? Okay, I guess. I'm still getting used to. I gestured towards my breasts. Mum chuckled. Well, get used to them, girl. I've had to, she said, placing a boiled eggs and a plate of soldiers in front of me to go with the coffee I had already poured for myself. You've had more practice than me, I said. That clever remark earned me a smack on the back of my head. I was tempted to tell her not to mess up my hair, but I knew how far to push my luck. After breakfast, I loaded up the dishwasher and set it going. Then I followed my mom to her bedroom where she sat me at her dresser. Now, a memory test. Where is my stuff? On the right? Correct. So where is your stuff? On the left. Correct again. Now, where is your foundation? I reached for a tube which, since it was labeled foundation, was really easy. I held it up. Is this it? I knew I was right due to her wide smile. What followed was myself applying my own makeup under instruction from my mom, who explained at each step what I was doing and generally correcting my mistakes as I made them, but mostly before I made them. By the time the lip gloss went on, I was looking good. A soft natural look around my eyes with light blue blending into dark blue over my eyes, which popped out due to dark eyeliner that I had applied so carefully. I had a champagne blush to highlight my cheekbones and a light red shade on my lips. I looked good. I looked sophisticated and elegant. It was amazing that I could present such a feminine image. It had taken us an hour, and Mom said that, with practice, I could apply it in about half that time, maybe less. But it would take time and practice. And with the wide variety of colors on offer, I could create a look for all occasions. Okay. Go and dress now, my mom said. I rose from the dresser and returned to my bedroom. I pulled the blouse on first. It was a dark blue and felt smooth and silky. I later learned it was satin. The skirt had appeared to be knee-length when it was on the hanger, but when I stepped into it and pulled it up around my waist, I realized that it was above the knee. It wasn't short by any stretch of the imagination, but it felt nice and had a flair to it that I liked. I examined my image in the mirror in my bedroom and couldn't resist doing a twirl. I heard someone laughing and turned to see my mom stood in the doorway. How do I look? Like my daughter. A little while later, we were driving to a shopping center on the edge of town. Well away from the local town center and where there was less chance of bumping into anyone we knew. Leaving the house for first time had been the most nerve-wracking thing I had ever done. I stood in the hallway wearing a jacket that Mom had bought me. It was black leather, but it was a feminine style. She had given me one of her handbags. She had at least 5 of them. In it she had placed my smartphone, my cash, and a purse which my mom also gave me. She also added a hairbrush, a compact mirror and mascara, my eyeshadow and my lipstick, just in case I needed to make repairs to my look over the day. I had waited in the doorway as Mom walked out to the car and started it up. Then I had put on a pair of dark sunglasses and scuttled out, pulling the door shut behind me. I had scurried to the open passenger door. I dropped my bottom into the seat and then, with my knees together, I had swung my legs into the car, pulled the door shut, placed my handbag on my lap, and had tried to sink into the seat. "Seatbelt, please." And no hiding, Mom had said as she snatched the glasses from my face. "Now sit up straight and stop slouching." I tried to sit up and relax, but I was still very nervous. I was after all a boy, in a skirt and blouse and a layer of makeup, pretending to be a girl. And I was outside, in public, in the outside world. Well, I was in a car, but you know what I mean. However, as we left the streets where we lived, I found myself nervousness dissipating. Of course, there was still the possibility that someone who knew my mom would see us and would wonder what she was doing driving around with a young girl. As we left the area, I grew more confident and sat up in the seat, looking out of the window and watching the other cars. Wondering who they were, where they were going, and why they were going there. As we drew nearer the shopping center, Mom pulled into the car park and drove close up to the edge of the center. She parked 100 feet away from the entrance. As she parked the car and applied the handbrake, she turned to me. "Are you ready?" No, I wasn't ready. I was scared to death. I wanted time to roll back to Friday lunchtime and change it to a time when I was doing this in secret, in private. For a moment I wished that I had never found that damn swimsuit, never tried it on. I glanced at the entrance, and then back. Mom. Yes. Mom beamed. "Let's go then." We stepped from her car and Mom locked it. As we strode towards the entrance, I saw people coming and going. They were too wrapped up in their own actions and thoughts to take much notice of us. I walked side by side with my mom as we entered the shopping center. I hesitated for a moment. There were too many people. Too many. I felt my mom take my hand. It instilled a sense of confidence in me. I could do this. I let go of her hand. Right. Where to first? I asked. Mom smiled at me, a warm, benevolent smile that flowed into me, increasing my confidence. Essentials first, then window shopping. Business before pleasure. We spent that first hour getting essentials. More underwear, more makeup, and 3 pairs of new shoes. 2 pairs of flats and a pair of 3-inch stocky heels. They were white, and Mom said I needed a new dress to go with them. Loaded down with shopping bags, and we had not finished shopping yet, we returned to the car and placed our bags in the boot of the car before returning to the shopping center. We spent the next hour window shopping and admiring the dresses in the windows, occasionally going into the shops to try dresses on and see how they fit. The first time that Mom suggested I try a dress on, I nearly had a fit of hysterics. But Mom calmed me down, and I actually went into a changing room and tried it on. It was white, a hemline that settled just above my knees with lace sleeves and was absolutely adorable. I took off my blouse and skirt and I wriggled into the dress, managing to zip it up. The look of delight on my mother's face showed her approval. She commented on how well it hung on me and after checking the price, agreed to buy it for me. We saw the same dress in black and put it on a wish list. I paid for the dress myself, with cash that Mom pressed into my hand. I was really nervous approaching the young saleswoman, thinking that she knew she would treat me with disdain and disgust, and announce to the store that I was a boy in drag. She smiled at me as she took the dress, scanned it and then folding it and placing it in the bag. She took my money and gave me my change with swift efficiency and a cheerful smile. What she said at the end of the transaction gave me a swell of approval. "There you go, miss. I hope your boyfriend likes it." I walked away with a buzz. Mom had a final store to visit. She steered me towards a Victoria's Secret store and we entered. I was immediately embarrassed and flushed red. It was weird being surrounded by all this lacy feminine underwear. You need some pretty matching underwear. So, look for something you like. I think you should go for something with a garter belt and stockings. Ultimate femininity. She grinned and then guided me to a rack of matching underwear. One set did indeed catch my eye. It was black. The bra had a gold and silver pattern on it. The panties had a similar design and the garter belt was plain, but the suspender straps were in silver and 3 gold bows adorned the front of the belt. It was ludicrously expensive, but Mom agreed. We then chose 3 pairs of stockings. 2 were plain 15 denier and 1 pair had a diamond pattern and all 3 pairs were seamed. My mom saved my embarrassment by purchasing them herself while I waited outside. But once we were outside, she pressed the bag into my hands. We decided to get a coffee and then head home. I had relaxed enough now to be more expressive in my movements and gestures and was relaxing into the role. This was great, it was too good to be true. And of course, it all came crashing down on us. Angela? Angela. We had reached the fountain by the entrance when the voice interrupted our conversation. Mom turned and found herself suddenly engulfed in an embrace. Mom reacted with surprise and embarrassment for a moment, struggling free of the embrace, until she recognized the woman, her face breaking into a wide smile. She then returned the embrace, warmly and lovingly. "Linda. Hi. Long time no see. How are you?" Her name was Linda Whiteley. A tallish woman dressed in skin-tight pale blue jeans, a white top and black leather jacket. She had been our next-door neighbor until 18 months ago, when she and her son, a lad a year older than me called Alan, had left to move in with Linda's boyfriend, and Mom had lost contact with her. Odd, since they had been inseparable when they were neighbors. Linda was a few years younger than my mom, but they had so much in common that they could have been sisters. Alan and I had also gotten on fairly well. We cycled, played video games and walked in the park. I looked around for him, he wasn't there, but someone else was. It was a tallish young woman, who had stood back and was stood with her head down, a long mane of golden hair hiding her features. She was dressed in a pale blue skirt, a white blouse with black tights and black high-heeled shoes. Like Linda, she was wearing a leather jacket, but this was white and biker style. She appeared to be embarrassed for some reason. "My God, Angela, you haven't changed a bit," Linda said. "Except around the waist maybe," Mom replied. Linda laughed. "Nonsense, you've lost some weight actually. And you're just the same too. How are things with Daniel?" Linda offered. "Yes, that's right. Daniel." Mom sounded embarrassed. "We're fine. He's just proposed actually." She held out her left hand and Mom gasped at the sight of the ring. It had a huge diamond held between two pearls. "That must have cost a fortune," Mom said. Linda shrugged. "He's been saving for ages. We're planning the wedding actually." "Oh, we must catch up with each other. Here, let me give you my number." Linda dug into her purse for her phone as Mom glanced at me nervously. Linda followed her gaze and caught me looking up at her, giving her a good look at my face. I almost immediately turned away, looking at the nearby store. I felt Linda peering at me. "Angela, is this who I think it is?" she asked quietly. "Oh," my mom suddenly sounded embarrassed. This is my daughter. "Gabby." "Your daughter?" Linda said. I turned back to Linda. She was peering at me in a curious fashion, then she shrugged her shoulders, with a what the heck expression and smiled at me. "Hello, Gabby. My, how you've grown. You're very pretty." I blushed. "Thank you, Auntie Linda." Linda smiled and then turned to the woman at her side, who was trying, crab-like, to walk away. "Let me introduce you to my daughter." The girl looked to be on the verge of making a run for it. Linda grabbed the shoulder of the leather jacket and pulled the girl forward. "This is Helen. Say hello, Helen." The woman looked up. I was confused. Linda had son, called Alan. Who the hell was? Wait a minute, I thought. Helen's eyes grew wide as we recognized each other. Helen looked from me to my mom and grew a little more confident in her appearance. "Hi, Auntie Angela." She glanced awkwardly at me. "Hi, Gabby." I merely glared at Helen until common sense intervened and I managed to slap my mouth shut. I opened it again, after careful thought as to what I should say. "Hello, Helen. It's nice to meet you," I finally managed. Helen looked up at me, a little embarrassed, then she straightened up and drew her hair back over her right ear. "It's nice to see you again," she said. There was an embarrassed silence for a while. I don't know the others were thinking, but one word was ringing loudly in my head. Awkward. Then Auntie Linda brightened up. "Hey, I've just had a great idea. Why don't we split up?" "Meaning?" Mom asked. "Well, there's a coffee shop just down the way there. And there's a McDonald's on the upper tier. Let's say you and I, Angela, catch up over a coffee and the girls can have a cheeseburger and a milkshake and get reacquainted. And we meet back here in an hour. How's that sound?" My mom considered it. She actually considered it. And then she smiled. "I think that sounds great. What do you think, girls?" I thought it sounded totally bonkers, and the look on Helen's face told me that she thought the same. She glanced at me and then smiled, the change in expression mirroring the change in her thinking. "I think that's a great idea. What do you think, Gabby?" I gritted my teeth and was about to answer, when Mom answered for me. "That's agreed then. We'll see you in an hour." I was about to argue that I hadn't agreed to it, but Helen stepped forward and took me by the arm. "Come on, Gabby, I think we have lots to talk about." In a daze, and I honestly don't remember the next few minutes, Helen led me through the shopping center by hooking her arm in mine and leading me to the upper tier. My mind was in an absolute mess. So much had happened in the least few minutes and it had raised dozens, no, hundreds of questions. Questions that I did not really want the answers to. Whoever said that ignorance was bliss hit the proverbial nail right on the head. We garnered little attention as we entered the McDonald's where Helen ordered, then picked up and paid for 2 Big Macs, 2 medium packs of fries, a sprinkled donut for me and a hot apple pie for her. We had 2 large Pepsis instead of the milkshakes that Auntie Linda had suggested. We made our way out onto a balcony that overlooked the nearby park and the small river that ran through it. We found a table right on the edge of the balcony, away from sensitive ears, and sat down. Helen placed my meal before me and set hers in front of her before setting the tray aside on the next empty table. Right then, Helen said, unwrapping her Big Mac, "Let's swap stories. Who goes first?" She then took a big bite of her burger and began chewing. I will," I said, placing my arms on the table. I've been dressing up since I was 13. I've always been fascinated by women's clothes, and I started buying clothes then. My mom found me on Friday afternoon, and since then, she's been teaching me how to act like a girl and, basically, pretend to be a girl. When I'm Gabby, I feel calmer, more confident, and just nicer. Helen chuckled as she took a sip of her Pepsi. "So is this your first time out?" I nodded as I opened up my Big Mac and began munching on it, picking up the scraps of lettuce from the box and eating it. Helen nodded in appreciation. "Well, you look great. And your mannerisms are perfect. I think your mom's done a good job. Anyway, I've been dressing up for years. It started with my mom's clothes and she caught me when I was about 9. Helen paused to take a big chunk of her hamburger and chewed it, washing it down with a gulp of Pepsi. I was in a bit of a daze. That was 2 years before I had found the swimsuit and a further 5 years before I started dressing up properly. Helen finished off her burger and wiped her mouth with a napkin. My mom was angry at first, but when she had calmed down, she asked me a load of questions. By then she had read up on it and found that it was a perfectly ordinary thing for a young boy to do, no stranger than stamp collecting or train spotting. And then she started buying me my own clothes and taught me makeup skills and how to act like a girl. I had finished my burger off by now and was starting on the fries, between sips of my drink. To know that Alan had been dressing up as Helen while I had known him was a little puzzling. "You've been doing it that long?" I asked. Helen nodded. Then with a frown, she dug into her handbag for her phone, which was ringing. I turned away to give her some privacy. "Hello? Oh, hi. No, it's Helen. I'm out shopping with my mom." She glanced sideways at me. "I ran into a friend actually, an old friend I used to know. She's called Gabby." Helen listened to her end of the conversation for a few moments and then she smiled. "No, she's a girl like me." Then her expression turned to one of mock shock. "No, of course not. You know I'm not like that." "I don't think she is either." There was a garbled noise on the smartphone and Helen was suddenly smiling broadly. "Hey, that's a great idea." "I don't know. I'll ask her." She dropped the phone to her shoulder for a moment. "Are you free tomorrow afternoon?" she asked. I've got nothing planned." I was puzzled now. Helen raised the phone to her ear. "She's free, but listen, we only met up again today, so we need to talk properly to get to know each other again. Also, we've only just found out about each other." Helen listened for a few more moments and then with a big smile, she nodded. Okay. I'll call you later." "Yeah, see you soon." She chuckled a little. "I love you too." She ended the call and put her phone back into her handbag. That was Frankie. She placed her hand up the side of her face. "She's my girlfriend," Helen whispered. "And she knows?" I asked, gesturing to her clothes. Helen nodded earnestly. "Oh, yeah. She's cool about it. Anyway, tell me more about yourself." I shrugged. "I've told you everything." Helen rolled her eyes. "No, you idiot. Tell me about you and what's been going on with you. I've missed you." I suddenly catoned on to what she meant. "Oh, you mean, since you and your mom left?" "Yes, doofus. Honestly." We spent the next half hour filling each other in on what had happened in our lives since Linda and Alan had moved in with Daniel. Alan's real dad had run off when he had been 2, so he did not know his dad, but Daniel had been good, both for his mom and him. He had stepped up to become a father figure to Alan and even knew about Helen, who he treated with equal courtesy. He had met Frankie at college and they hit it off pretty quickly. She had been nervous telling Frankie, real name Francesca, but she preferred Frankie, about herself, but Frankie had been fine with it and she had embraced Helen eagerly. I also told him about my time. I had a few friends. Max had taken his place as best friend, and how I spent my days doing homework, revising for my upcoming exams, and how well I was doing. I was heading for 6th form and A-levels the way I was going. Helen congratulated me and then called me a swot. But then she admitted that I had always been smarter than her. "So you're heading to university?" she asked. "I don't know yet. I don't know if we can afford it," I replied. "Can't you get a grant or a loan, anything?" I shrugged. I'd rather not leave university with a heavy loan still hanging around my neck. And since I don't know what I want to do yet, I wouldn't know what to focus on. I didn't know what I wanted to do either. But forget the future for now, let's focus on the present. "What are you doing tomorrow?" I sat back. I hadn't planned on doing anything really. I was hoping I could relax after the last couple of days and come down from the high. Maybe spend the day dressed as, God forbid, a boy. I shrugged after a few moments' thought. I don't know. I wasn't planning on doing anything. Although I do have some homework that needs doing, it's not due till the end of the week, so I can possibly. Good. Can you come round to my house tomorrow? I don't know where it is. I can give you the address, but can you come? The more I thought about it, the more I remembered Alan and the friendship we had. I nodded. Yeah. I'd like that. Okay. Now, I'd like you come as Gabby. A mixture of different emotions raced through my head. Surprise, anxiety, fear. Why was guilt in there? I did not know why, but I did want to know one thing. Why? Helen smiled. Well, you're not the only boy who dresses like a girl in this town, and neither am I. When Mom was doing her research, she found a local crossdressers group called, get this, the Sequins. What? Here? I asked in an incredulous tone. The town we lived in was northern and provincial. It didn't even have a soccer team. To know that there was a group who helped people like me was a revelation. Helen was nodding vigorously. I know, it's crazy, right? Anyway, it's a group dedicated to promoting understanding and tolerance and also to provide a safe environment for crossdressers to get together. Anyway, every bank holiday one member's family provides a space, and since it's the beginning of summer, my mom decided to hold a barbecue at our house. Because Daniel has this big-arse house with a massive back lawn, and it's set back from the road a little so there's plenty of privacy. Having finished her burger, Helen put her rubbish into one pile and reached for her apple pie. I had long since finished my donut, so I put my rubbish with hers. I suspect that she was letting the information seep in before she continued. Anyway, there's about 25 people coming. Most of them are crossdressers like us, of various ages, who have promised to attend. Now, the party is due to start at 2 o'clock, but if you could come round for about 1 o'clock, that gives me a chance to introduce you to Frankie and Daniel. What do you say? Helen, having let the apple pie to cool sufficiently to eat without burning her mouth, as well as placing the conversational ball in my court, looked up. I didn't know what to say. In the space of 72 hours I had gone from a boy with a guilty secret to a confident young woman. Of course, I was still a boy, but I looked like a young woman. I'll admit it, my thoughts were a little fuddled, but I had the rest of my life to sort it all out. I'll need to settle it with my mum, but I'll let you know. Okay? Helen smiled so brightly, she was glowing. Okay. Oh, speaking of mums, we'd better get going. We're supposed to meet them 5 minutes ago. We cleared our rubbish away and put the remnants of our meal in the bin, the tray on top. We then left the restaurant and made our way back down to the fountain. Neither my mum or Auntie Linda were there, so we sat on a bench. I saw a branch of a popular technology store that sold pre-owned goods. Thinking of the game I wanted, I suggested to Helen that we go in for a look around, and she readily agreed. No one paid us any attention as we walked over and went into the store. I scanned the shelves for the title I wanted and saw that I could still afford it, despite spending some of my money earlier in the day. Helen and I stood in line while we waited to be served. As we waited, I glanced around and saw that though a few people were checking us out, the looks we attracted were mostly nondescript and noncommittal, and though we were examined and under scrutiny, there was no indication that those who looked had any suspicions about us, accepting us as what we appeared to be. Or if they did suspect us to be something different to what we appeared to be, they said nothing. I began to suspect that if they did realize we were two boys dressed up as girls, they didn't care. As we waited for the sales assistant, a young woman with a heap of tattoos and several piercings, to retrieve the disc and manuals for the case, we chatted about nonsense, and when she came back, I gave her the cash. She put the game in a bag and handed it over. "There you go, miss," she said with a smile. It may have been false, it may have been my imagination, but I walked out of that store with a big boost of confidence. We made our way back to the fountain where our parents had finally arrived. We spent a further few minutes chatting, exchanging phones numbers and addresses, and then we parted. Helen and Auntie Linda heading to the local bus exchange, and Mom and I headed back to the car park and made our way home. All the way, I felt as if I was floating on air. We arrived home at about 4 that afternoon and spent the remainder of the early evening putting my new purchases away, and then after a light meal of salad, with a juicy pork pie each, we retired to the living room. Mom opened a bottle of wine and handed me a glass. I accepted it gratefully. "Ooh, thank you," I said. "Don't get used to it," Mom said. "You're still underage, you know. But you've earned yourself a glass." She sat down on the sofa opposite me and took a sip. "So, you first time dressed as a girl out in public, how did it feel?" I sat back and tried to sort my feeling into some sort of order. Different words flowed through my mind as I ran the experience through my head. I finally came up with 2 words to describe my day: scary and exhilarating. My mom frowned. "How so?" "Well, it was scary because I was dressed as a girl, but it was exhilarating for exactly the same reason." I frowned. "Does that make sense?" Mom thought for a moment, then she nodded. "In a way. I can only imagine what a rush it must have been. But you handled it extremely well. I'm proud of you. So, can I do this again?" "Of course you can, but only when I'm with you." She suddenly brightened and sat upright in her chair. "Which reminds me, Linda told me that Alan, as Helen, is a member of a transvestite support group that meets up regularly, and tomorrow, they are holding a summer barbecue. She's invited us." Oh, I had forgotten about that in the rush. And to be honest, I still did not know what to make of the offer. I had spent one day out, dressed as a girl. Oh hell, I'd spent the best part of the weekend dressed as a girl. I was sort of hoping I could go back to being dressed as a boy again. But a small part wondered what it might be like. Mom sensed my hesitation. "If you want go, I'd be happy to take you. It will give me and Linda a chance to catch up," Mom said. "But I don't want to push you of the front door in a dress again. Not if you don't want to go. But let's face facts. If I left you alone in the house on a bank holiday for a few hours, how long would it take before you were dressed up again?" I considered her answer. And I had to admit I'd be in a bra and panties before she was out of the door. So as anxious as I was to appear in public again as a girl, okay. I would like to go out again, and I want to see Helen again. And if it means being in the company of other men who crossdress, then so be it. Mom rolled her eyes. "Oh, don't be so melodramatic. It means being in the company of like-minded individuals. They won't judge you at all. They might even help you. Now pick another movie and we'll wind down after an exciting day." We argued again over the movie we wanted to watch. We eventually settled on Mamma Mia. I didn't want to watch it, but I settled down to watch it anyway. And if I'm honest, I actually enjoyed. A little. Mom had promised me 1 glass of wine. But she actually poured me a second. Part 4, Monday. Accepted. Bank holiday dawned. It was a bright hot morning and I lay in bed for a moment, staring out through the window, at the golden sunlight that streamed in through the window. Eventually, I realized that I was wide awake and that it would be pointless to stay in bed any longer. I reached for my phone and saw that the time just turned 9 o'clock. Was my mom awake? I doubted it for some reason. Unable to sleep, I dragged myself out of bed and found myself in a shirt and shorts, my regular night outfit. I debated with myself for a moment and then dressed in a pair of boxer shorts and clean socks. Then I shrugged into a pair of jeans and a t-shirt. I looked at my reflection. I was surprised by the image that presented itself, an androgynous-looking figure. Clearly a boy, but with soft feminine features. Only the lack of hips and a bust showed a male. I headed down to the kitchen and made myself some toast and a cup of tea. I wondered then what I could do. I was often at a loss as to what to do on a bank holiday. I was roused from my thoughts, which had turned to my bike and a short ride through the park, when Mum, still in a nightgown and her dressing gown, came into the kitchen. "Morning, Gavin. Sleep well?" "Yeah, really well. Yourself?" I jumped up to make her a cup of coffee. "Oh, I slept like a baby," she said. "Anyway, Linda wants us at her house for 1 o'clock, which means we have to leave by 12:30 at the latest. Which means you have start getting ready by 11 at the earliest." "Okay." I glanced up at the clock and saw that it was only just turned 9:30. "I might go out on the bike for a bit if that's okay?" "Sure. Just don't be gone too long." I headed into the garage and pulled my road bike down from the hooks on the wall. It was an old bike, at least 5 years older than I was, but it was well maintained and well loved. Still in the garage, I strapped on my helmet and mounted the machine. I freewheeled down the drive, before turning onto the road, aware of the traffic and other vehicles. After 15 minutes, I reached the park, surprised to find it rather empty on a bank holiday, but it was still early. As I powered along the footpaths and up the hills and down the banks, I found myself wondering. A pair of feminine sports leggings and a sports bra. Could I actually pull that look off? By 1:15 we were pulling onto the drive of a big house with a double garage. The drive was easily big enough to accommodate several cars, so there was plenty of space to park. Linda was waiting for us outside and with a tall man at her side. We were a little late, but judging by the smiles on their faces, they were forgiving. We were late not because I had been too long in the park, but I decided to wear the fancy underwear with the garter belt and the stocking. I would have gone with tights, but I wanted to feel the sensations of wearing stockings, to feel pulling on the garter's tabs as I walked. It felt way better than I expected. Anyway, that took a little longer to put on, and of course, I wore my white dress with the lace sleeves, so of course, I also had to wear the 3-inch stocky heels. They were taller than the ankle boots, so I had to get used to them before we set off. And of course, the traffic slowed us down a lot. Linda stepped over as Mum and I climbed out of the car. Her arms outstretched, a big warm smile on her face. The tall man hung back. "Angela, so good to see you again," she said, embracing my mum. "Thank you for having us over. What a lovely house you have. Wait till you see the inside, it's huge." Linda then turned to me. "Hello, Gabby, you look fabulous." I blushed, a reaction that I was becoming accustomed to. "Thank you. Helen is getting stuff ready in the back garden. Oh, by the way," she grabbed the hand of the tall man, who was standing back a little, his hands in his jeans pockets, a bright smile on his face, and pulled him forward. "This is Daniel. Dan, this is my friend Angela and her daughter Gabby." Daniel held out his hand. "Angela, it's a pleasure to meet you. Linda hasn't stopped talking about you since yesterday. I feel as if I knew you already." Mum took the offered hand and pulled him into her embrace. "Daniel, it's great meeting you at last. But I know next to nothing about you, apart from the fact that you have a lovely house." Daniel chuckled. "Perks of being a self-employed electrician," he confessed. My ears pricked up. "You're an electrician?" Daniel smiled at me. "You must be Gabby," he said. He extended his hand. I shook it, surprised at how gentle his grip was. "And yes, I am an electrician. And believe me, it's a lucrative little job. Is that something you want to do?" I thought about it. One of the many job ideas that had drifted through my head over the last couple of years was the possibility of something in construction, so maybe electrician? Air. I don't know yet, but probably. It's hard work getting a foot in the door, but once you're in there, you're made. Anyway, Linda said, let's continue this inside before it gets awkward. We entered the house and into the hallway, which could have contained our whole living room. Linda showed us into the living room and we sat down with Linda as Dan fussed about in the kitchen making drinks. As Mom and Linda chatted, I gawked at their TV. It was fixed to the wall and was absolutely bloody huge. I saw Helen enter the room. She was dressed in light gray jeggings and a white t-shirt. Seeing her dressed so casually, I felt a little overdressed. Hey Gabby, great to see you again. Hi Helen. I would have said more, but Linda cut me off. You're not wearing that this afternoon, are you? Helen looked aghast. Of course not. I'm going to get changed in a bit. Come on Gabby, I'll show you round. I was shown the kitchen, which looked something out of a cookery show. All that was missing were the cameras. I was shown the back garden, though it looked more like a local park than a garden, it was that big. It even had a pond, though no fish. I was shown the dining room, laid out with sandwiches, pastries and confectionaries, ready for upcoming barbecue. Helen then led me upstairs where I was shown the bathroom, which was huge with a large tub, a walk-in shower and even a bidet. Helen showed me her male bedroom, which was tastefully decorated and obviously male. I was envious of the guitar and amplifier that stood in one corner. It was a Gibson style, and it looked like a genuine Gibson. Helen then showed me her room. It was clearly a female's room. Pastel colors, a soft carpet and a large bed with a canopy. A large dressing table with a vast array of makeup was set against one wall, and against the other were two large wardrobes which she threw open and were crammed full of clothes. She reached for a pale blue dress with lace sleeves and bodice. I'll be wearing this for the barbecue. She held it up to her body. What do you think? It's gorgeous, I said. Oh, thank you, she said. I'm thinking of wearing stockings with it. What do you think? You should. I'm wearing stockings after all. Really? I pulled up the hem of my dress, revealing the lacy stocking top and a flash of bare thigh before I dropped it down again. Helen nodded appreciatively. Frankie loves it when I wear stockings. Just then the doorbell rang. Oh, speak of the devil, that must be her now. Helen headed for the door and I followed her, but held back. Helen opened the door to show the newcomer. It was a tall, slender girl. She was dressed in a pair of black shiny leggings and a lace blouse, which clearly showed her bra. She was also wearing a pair of 4-inch heel boots. Her blonde was short, but it was in a feminine style, and her makeup was soft and understated. They embraced after greeting each other, and then Helen showed the young girl in. Frankie, I'd like to introduce to an old friend of mine, this is Gabby. Frankie's eyes widened in surprise. Oh yes. I've heard a lot about you since yesterday. She took my hands in a gentle hold and looked at me closely. You look fantastic, very natural. I love the dress, by the way. Thank you. You look great as well. Oh, thank you. I found myself being embraced briefly before Frankie pulled back. Her smile was warm and genuine. It turned into a frown when she looked at Helen's outfit. You're wearing that this afternoon. Helen's expression grew angry as she looked down at her jeggings and t-shirt. What's wrong with this top? An hour later, the barbecue was in full swing. Daniel was stood at the barbecue with an apron on, cooking burgers, sausages and jacket potatoes. Music flowed out through from the living room through the open patio doors, almost drowned out by the lively chatter of the guests that were assembled either in the living room or in the garden on chairs and stools. Some were sat on blankets. And the only person dressed in male clothes was Daniel. All the rest were actual women and men dressed as women. Their ages ranged from teenage like Helen and myself through to the oldest member of the group, a 67-year-old gentleman who called herself Vanessa and was the founder of the group. Vanessa was accompanied by her wife, a 60-year-old lady called Fiona. I was introduced to them first as they were the first to arrive. Despite her age, Vanessa looked a good 16 years younger and was dressed conservatively in a two-piece business suit in peach with an off-white blouse. Fiona was wearing a similar suit, though hers was a light gray matched with a red top. I complimented them on their appearance and Vanessa had smiled graciously. "I moisturize. And I exercise rigorously," she explained. Fiona leant in. "Not to mention all the padding." Vanessa went on to explain that she had founded the group in 2010 when she had taken early retirement from her position as CEO of a major company and had finally been given the freedom to dress as often as she had wanted. Fiona explained that she knew about Vanessa as soon as they had started dating in the late 70s. Back then there had been a massive amount of prejudice against crossdressers, so he had done it in secret, but this had been a lonely life. With the millennium, attitudes had shifted and Vanessa had come out more often. She had started the group after finding several other crossdressers in the area. From a small group of 5 people, it had grown into an organization with about 40 members. Admission was free, provided that members paid their own way on any social outings that the group arranged. By then others had started arriving. I was introduced to so many different people that it was difficult to remember them all. But the overwhelming response was that I looked very good and looked passable. Sadly, not everyone was passable. There was one crossdresser that did not look passable at all. For a kick-off, she was well over 6 foot and largely overweight. She was dressed in a yellow summer dress, and because she didn't shave, she had a fine covering of dark hair on her arms and legs. She just liked the clothes, she said. She didn't want to pass. She was, however, very sociable and was accepted by the others. There was also one girl there who called herself Penny. Dressed in a knee-length black skirt with a white blouse, gray tights and black high-heeled shoes, she looked extremely natural, but she was on her own. Apparently, she was married with a young child. Her partner did not like this aspect of Penny's personality and refused to let her dress at home, especially with a young toddler running around. She was a member of the group because she needed to dress up and could only do so within the group. I felt sad for her in that her partner did not accept her dressing. Hearing her story made me realize how lucky I was to have my mom, who not only accepted this but was helping me. There were several couples present who were men dressed in female clothes with their girlfriends who accepted their men dressing as women. 2 of the couple were dressed in identical outfits and one couple looked more like twins than boyfriend and girlfriend. One couple, in their early 20s, I got to know very well, as our stories were very similar. Hannah, her real name was Andrew, and her girlfriend Kelly had sort monopolized my presence. She too was a new member and we were sat on the couch on the living. Hannah and Kelly were sat with bottles of beer while I nursed a large glass of Coke. "I started dressing when I was very young," Hannah told me. "I had 2 older sisters and one of them was really into gymnastics. And I was fascinated by her leotards. So I tried one and that led to other clothes. And when she found out, she helped me out. And Hannah's been a part of my life ever since." "I've known about Hannah for ages," Kelly said. "I was a little freaked out at first, but then I realized that Hannah was just an extension of Andrew. And a nice one too." "So, what about you?" Hannah asked me. "A swimsuit, you said?" "Yeah. When I was 10. I didn't start dressing up until I was 13, but my mom's been helping me since she found me on Friday." "Well, I think you look fantastic," said Kelly, "and it's so unfair that men get teased for dressing up." "I know," Hannah said. "Tell me about it. I mean, if Kelly got up in the morning, put on my underwear, a pair of my jeans and a t-shirt, or a suit and tie and stepped out through the door, no one would bat an eyelid. But if I get up and put on her bra and panties, put on a skirt and blouse, or a nice dress, and a layer of makeup, and I step out through the door, people start thinking what's wrong with this picture? They start calling out names and making all sorts of false assumptions, like I'm gay or weak or something. It's not fair that we can't be who we want to be. And all we want to be is ourselves." As we talked about other things, such as movies, hobbies, what television programs we liked and so on, I can honestly say that I forgot Hannah was a 24-year-old man called Andrew. Weird. And I don't think that they even considered the fact that I was a 16-year-old boy called Gavin. The party went on till the early evening. And despite it being early summer, it grew chilly in the garden, so the party moved into the house. It was a good thing that it was such a big house. As I talked to the other members, I learned more about this hobby of mine. How it was not a perversion, that it was not a fetish, that it did not mean that I was gay or even that I wanted to become a girl. I also learned from a doctor, who had come dressed as a nurse even though it wasn't a fancy dress as such, that medical research had shown that men who dealt with stress by inventing a female persona for themselves and dressed as women were healthier and more compassionate and in general led less stressful lives because they chose to wear dresses. I had not even considered this. My mom, after catching up with Linda, had spoken to the others and also learned more, through hearing their personal stories. I think my mom learned as much, if not more than I did. Another couple who were present at the party were a brother and sister called Jilly and Tammy respectively, aged 16 and 19, also respectively, and were wearing matching black dresses. Jilly was a slender girl with a long mane of auburn hair that she wore in a tight bun on the top of her head, a style that suited her. I was also trying to ignore how attractive she actually was. She had almond-shaped eyes that were a clear blue. And if that was not enough, she had a smile that could melt an iceberg. Tammy's real name was Thomas, which in her youth had been shortened to Tommy and led to her being called Tammy. She was pretty as well. A crop of short brown hair was cut in a feminine style. Her eyes were also blue, but they were a pale blue with a hint of green. "I've been dressing up since I was 9, Tammy explained. "I'd been wanting to dress up for ages. I don't know why and I still don't know. Anyway, I asked my mother if I could try some girls' clothes. I've told him since that he could have asked me, but he didn't want to embarrass me," Jilly said. "Not that I would have been embarrassed. Anyway, Mom agreed, grudgingly admittedly. But she borrowed some of Jill's clothes and let me try them on. She later said that if she let me dress up, it would be a phase that would pass." She threw her hands up to indicate her dress. "It clearly hasn't," she said with a large smile. "She's fine with it now," said Jilly. "She's given up trying to stop him." Tammy rolled her eyes. "No one can stop me, or make me stop." She thought for a moment. "I'm not sure why I dress up. All I know is that I like dressing up. It makes me a better person." Jilly was nodding emphatically. "Tom is a great big brother, but she's also a really great big sister." Tammy looked happy. Tearful, but happy. She embraced her little sister. "Aw, thanks Jilly." Helen, who'd been mingling throughout the party, entered the room. "Hey guys, hope you enjoyed the party." Tammy leapt to her feet and embraced her. "Hey, Helen. You should really sit with us. We're having a great time with Gabby. She's great." She smiled at me. "We should go out together sometime." Frankie entered the room, an idea forming in her mind, judging by the look on her face. "Well, we're all working tomorrow, as it's back to normal. So, how about going shopping at the weekend? All 5 of us?" Jilly asked. Frankie nodded. "That's a great idea." She turned to me. "That is, of course you want to come." "I'd like to. I'll need to check with my mom," I said. "But I'm sure she'll be fine with it." Jilly beamed with delight. It turned out that Tammy was a friend of Helen's from their work at a local call center and had discovered that they shared the same hobby when they arrived at work in drag for a fancy dress charity day. Helen had come as French maid and Tammy had worn a second-hand wedding dress. Tammy had joined the group about 6 months later. We fell into discussing our various and varied lives soon. All 5 of us were sat around the dining table still holding the remains of the buffet and chatting like old friends. We discussed movies, hobbies, our plans for the future, all manner of things. And of course, we were discussing fashion. By 8:30, the party was all but over and people were leaving. Angela and Linda were in the kitchen discussing their lives and how they would stay connected this time around. After admiring each other's dresses, Helen, Frankie and Tammy had taken themselves up to Helen's room to show Tammy her range of clothes, and I was left in the dining room with Jilly discussing my favorite topic, Marvel Comic Universe films. It seemed that Jilly had the same interests in me. We both science fiction movies, especially the MCU movies. We both had a PlayStation. We both liked reading. We even rode bicycles. I had my old street racer and she had a 21-gear mountain bike, though only 19 of those gears were actually working. I found myself offering to take a look at it for her. I was comfortable in her company and got the impression that she felt the same way. I'll admit it. She was an attractive young woman and I was attracted to her. But was it mutual? At 8:45, Mom appeared and said that it was time to go home. I said goodbye to Helen and Frankie at the door. As we walked to our car, Tammy and Jilly were walking to their mom's car, who had arrived to pick them up. As Tammy was getting into the car, Jilly rushed over to me. "I'll see you soon, Gabby, and I hope I get see Gavin sooner." She paused for a moment, and then kissed me on the cheek. I was stunned for a moment, unable to speak. Then my brain rebooted and I was able to respond. "I look forward to it. I'll see you soon." Jilly turned and was walking back to her waiting car. "You got my number right?" Yes, I said. "I'll call you later." "You'd better." "Jilly." Then she gone, the car pulling away. My mom was gazing at me in a shrewd manner, her smile wide and pleasant. "I think you've pulled Gabby." I rolled my eyes and sighed in an exasperated fashion. "Oh please, Mom. I hardly know her." Still, I was thinking that possibly, Jilly might have been interested in me. I was so wrapped up trying to think things through that when Mom offered to buy pizza for tea I agreed. It took me a while before it sank in that I was in the takeaway with the money, alone. Mom had stayed in the car. I think I managed the task without arousing suspicion. Back at home, I got changed out of the white dress, the lingerie and wiped the makeup from my face. I dressed in a fresh pair of boxers and socks with a pair of dark blue jeans and a t-shirt. I was about to leave my room when the phone rang. I felt a swell of joy when I saw the caller ID. "Hey, Jilly, you okay?" "I'm fine. Just checking that you got home okay." "Oh yeah, we made it. We're just about to sit down and watch a movie." "Good, that's good." And speaking of movies, I was thinking about 2-for-1 cinema tickets on Wednesday. We could go to the cinema in town on Wednesday evening. They're still showing that science fiction film we talked about. Do you want to go? Hell yeah. Do you want me to come as Gabby or Gavin? As Gavin, of course. I think Gabby is cute and all, but I want to get to know Gavin. I sort off. She paused, and I waited, fearful of what she might say next. "You know what? Forget it. I don't even like you and I prefer it if we were just friends. I'm sorry I bothered you. Goodbye." "Okay, I'm going to say it," she eventually continued. "I fancy you. And I'd like to meet you as a boy. We're already good friends. I'm hoping we can get closer." "Okay," I said, my confidence rising and making me add, "I fancy you too. And if you like me as Gabby, you'll love me as Gavin." Her laughter was heartwarming. "I hope so." We made arrangements to meet up at the cinema. I decided to get my one and only suit cleaned and pressed. I had already made a good impression and I wanted to continue making good impressions. I turned my phone off and headed downstairs. Mom was already in the kitchen, setting out the pizzas on plates and sorting out the accompanying fries and drinks. "Hey, you're Gavin again." "Yeah. I don't want to be a girl all the time. And as I've spent the weekend dressed as girl, I'd like to be for a boy for a while." Mom nodded, in understanding fashion. "Okay. No problem. Who were you talking to?" "Jilly. She invited me out to the cinema on Wednesday." Mom smiled brightly. "Ooh. Has my boy got himself a date?" "Possibly. So are you going as Gabby or?" "No, she wants to meet me as Gavin." "That's great. That's wonderful. My little boy is growing up into a confident young woman." I almost choked on my drink. I had just taken a sip of Coke and it went down the wrong way as I tried to laugh and swallow at the same time. Mom watched with a smile on her face as I composed myself. "There's just one thing. I looked up from the pizza that was cooling on my lap. Oh, if you're going out on your first date, young man, you're going to do it properly.